And we are live. Welcome to Radio Mythoverse for July 2nd, 2019. You just heard the Changeling theme from Zal and Talus. Maeve Mackenzie, the lead character of Changeling, is the youngest of the Mythoverse 3. We join her at age 14 as a young, socially awkward Christian girl who suddenly discovers that she is a changeling or a fey baby that was switched for a human baby. Hers is a fascinating story, and Talus did a fantastic job with that track. Now, underneath that track, you saw Neon Maeve, an adorable animation based on the Neon meme with a Mythoverse twist. The art was done by Changeling colorist Ginger Foxy, and the frames were animated by Brett McGowan. Now, the digital download of the Changeling theme was made available on our recently funded Kickstarter campaign, so if you backed it at certain tiers, you will receive a copy of that song in your inbox along with the rest of the digital rewards. Now, Zalin's done a lot of work for a lot of different independent creators, including the Rags team, so he's quite the prolific composer. I'll put a link to his channel called Comic Book Music in the description below. Good evening, folks. I'm Dan, and with me tonight are the other two lead creators of the Mythoverse, Brett and Matt. Hey guys, glad to be on with you as always. How you doing?
Hey guys. So start off. Yeah, I mean, I can't. It kind of feels odd for me to take any credit for what Ginger did because all I really did was animated in Sony Vegas. It wasn't that hard. It's just a glorified slideshow. Ginger did all the hard work for that
She
little animation.
she did do all the hard work for it, but you did take part in it, which is why I gave you some credit for it. So,
Yeah, that's it. I'll take it.
yeah,
Take it, I guess.
take it. Just shut up and take it. Matt, how's everything going tonight?
Hey, going pretty good with the exception of rain right now.
Ah, it's raining.
So if I get knocked out, it's probably because of a thunderstorm.
All right,
Eh,
well,
I woke up to it raining on my side of the country. So I don't know what you're complaining about.
Because Comcast doesn't know how to take it.
well
Again,
when did they
that's
ever take it?
well, guys, I'll just say right off the bat, out where I live, it's either Comcast or CenturyLink, and CenturyLink is objectively worse.
Hmm. Well, we got some folks watching, so if you're watching and you haven't yet, please thumbs up the video. It really helps us out. It seems very simple, but it does go a long way.
Oh, we got Star Storyteller in the chat already, and hey, Star.
Hey, Star and Gorgonite
Hey, Star.
Emissary. Damn. Glad to have you folks here. So anyway, I'd like to, as always, I'd like to try to start off the show with some good news. So good news is we have the hoodies, the Maeve hoodies. We will begin working on them this week, probably this weekend because it is July the 4th week. We have family coming in. We're going to do the barbecue thing, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So probably not going to have that much time to get to it until the weekend. But we can rest assured that as soon as the hoodies are complete as we go, you will see the completed hoodies. The progress will be fully transparent. In addition, just a reminder that backers who purchase the hoodie can expect to receive 2 packages from the campaign, one consisting of the hoodie, which is going to be fulfilled from me, and the other containing all your books and everything else is going to be coming at you from Wicked Publishing because they have the relationship with the printer. It only makes sense to have them fulfill it. Yeah. So, real quick on the community side of things, this means this is going to be I'm going to be yielding the floor to Brett in a moment. He's our head of community outreach, and last week he devised a pretty cool competition of sorts over on our Discord server. What it technically boils down to is who can achieve the highest level in the eyes of our Me6 bot before each episode of Radio Mythoverse. So tell us how it turned out this week, Brett.
Okay, so this week's winner was Salem LeBlanc.
Salem LeBlanc. I am not surprised. That man was a monster this week in Discord.
Yeah, and just so and I know what, and if you go to the leaderboard channel on the Discord, it will say that his rank was number 2. But I just want to say, in the interest of full disclosure, that Matt, Dan, and I have disqualified ourselves from the competition, seeing as how the 3 of us are in this Discord more than anybody. So it's like, if we did, because honestly, if we did include ourselves, we'd won one of three of us would probably win out every week. So it just was not fair to everybody else.
No, because we tend to have a lot of behind the scenes discussions in our admin channels that can go on for quite some time, and that leads to an unfair racking up of a lot of points for the Me6 spot. So like Brett said, we will be disqualifying ourselves.
Unless, of course, we can figure out how to take ourselves off of Me6's radar, which I don't know if you can.
I'll look into it. Yeah. In the meantime, it really is a non-issue because we're all disqualified from it anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, like this week's winner was Salem, and right before we went live, I reset the XP, so now everybody has their shot at being number 1 next week.
Yep. And what does the person who won this contest get, Brett?
You get a no prize, which is getting announced that you won at the top of the episode, which...
There you go. Congratulations, Salem. You've won the first Mythoverse no prize for taking top honors in the Me6 competition. So, speaking a little bit more about the community, our Artist Alley channel that Brett set up recently is really jumping. It's full of art from all kinds of talented folks in our community. So if you've got the chops and you want to show it off, please do so. In that channel in particular, the Artist Alley channel, it is not restricted to art related to the Mythoverse like the fan art gallery is. It can be, your own OCs or whatever you wish. Just please, if it's not safe for work, please realize and be mindful that there's an entirely separate channel for that. So keep all the not safe for work art in that channel. Don't just dump it in where it's unrestricted.
By the way, Salem's in the chat right now. Don't know why he didn't jump off the globe. He should be.
Yeah, well, yes, you are a winner, and you win the no prize, Salem. Congratulations.
He'll probably jump in sooner or later before we go off air. But yeah.
Yep, Salem's always welcome. Salem's got a lot of interesting things in the works, including an interview with us that will be published in the first upcoming issue of the Wicked magazine. So, with all that said, I want to move over briefly to our head writer, Matt Trin. He's recently announced that he is currently writing a massive history for Mythic's Spirit Realm. Tell us a little bit about that without necessarily spoiling anything that will come as a surprise to the readers.
Well, it's probably not going to be released in the book for quite some time, but what I plan on doing is basically the creation myth, the wars that took place within them, because much like what not everyone will have the same opinions as everyone else, and sometimes wars will happen over it. But for the most part, the idea of this comes from the Silmarillion, so it'll be a creation of the world to more than likely a cough point, but just so you guys know, creation of the world does not really mean the actual creation of the world, just the creation of the spirit realm, which I don't know how much I want to spill about it, but it's not going to be the creation of the earth.
Mm-hmm. And the spirit realm is... Go ahead.
I was gonna say though, I mean, I've read the spirit realm. I mean, I've read the Silmarillion a little bit, and I mean, even if you go by say the Bible's creation myth, I mean, like it's not all meant to be like concrete. Like some of the stuff is sort of meant to be left up to the imagination and interpretation, because I don't know, I've just had this opinion with fantasy that the more you explain, the more you sort of take away from the mystery of it all.
Ultimately, it depends on the type of fantasy that's being told.
Yeah, like it works for Lord of the Rings, it doesn't work for Star Wars. Like the moment you try to bring realism into Star Wars, everything starts to crumble. Like, let's say, hey, where are the bathrooms? Who cares? How does hyperspace work? Who cares? I mean, that's not really what the story's about. So it doesn't necessarily work for Star Wars, but for Lord of the Rings, which is more or less about creating an epic fantasy, a new fairy tale for Great Britain, essentially, it works really well for there. And
Well,
Matt Reese is in the chat. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
yeah, Salem just hopped in on the panel, so do you want to get your word in first, Salem?
I did not hear what you guys just said. I just closed down YouTube. What did you just say?
Well, you won. Don't you want to be? I would assume you want to get in and get at a gloat in.
Yay! I won. I'm. My life is complete.
So
he is a Discord master.
Yes.
Although I'm pretty. It would have been nice if it had been touch and go between him and Demon Eater, because you two have had quite a few. I had some memorable dances on the server.
Hey, it's all in good fun.
I know. Demon Eater's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgonite wants to know, Matt, will there be extensive records and legends about the Gnome Holocaust?
what? It kind of just. Let me look it up.
He's saying extensive records and legends about the Gnome Holocaust.
That was a critical moment in the Mythoverse's epic history, so you can't leave that out.
There are no gnomes.
There are no gnomes?
Not anymore. They've been holocausted.
Exactly.
What, are there no gnomes now, or were there never any gnomes?
Oh, there never really was.
There are no gnomes. I want out of this universe.
I don't know. It's just like gnomes would be kind of make it a little goofy. I don't know. It's just like anytime gnomes get introduced, I have a hard time taking shit seriously.
You know what? Challenge accepted. I'll make a horror story about gnomes.
Well, are they gnomes like, David the Gnome with the red pointy hats? Because then I'm on board.
Okay, here's something. I just looked up the Wikipedia page. It says a gnome is a diminutive spirit in Renaissance magic and alchemy, first introduced by Paracelsus in the 16th century and later adopted by more recent authors, including those of modern fantasy literature. Their abilities is they can move through solid earth.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, and I'm just a little bit partial to gnomes because my daughter's auntie, my sister-in-law, is very crafty, and she made us a gnome family that represents each one of us. So I'm always happy to see more stuff about gnomes. And Gorgonite also says, don't forget the Leprechaun Civil War. That's also a critical, pivotal moment in Mythoverse history.
I am not going to introduce leprechauns in Changeling. I'm gonna be right off the bat with that. Yeah, no leprechauns.
I'll probably be too drunk for it too.
I don't know. It's just
take a gnome and then write a story or make them up just like the movie Leprechaun.
Oh boy.
Yeah, just you can stop them with shoes or a clover, that kind of thing.
Or it'll be like that gnome from the John Tron video.
Nice.
I'm thinking of those really bad gnome.
Or
why'd you bring
World of
this up?
Warcraft gnomes.
I'm thinking Gnomeo and Juliet, Sherlock gnomes.
Oh no gnomes with a little thong in the booty dance.
No.
Thank you. Alabaster Scarf joined the chat. Hey Alabaster, good to see you.
Hey.
So before we move on, Matt, I added a new piece of artwork to the slideshow we have displayed here that has several new Mythics characters. Would you care to tell us a little bit about them?
Yes. I believe I will.
Yes, please do.
I'll bring up my phone right now. But they're going to be characters that are introduced in the first issue. So, going from left to right, you have real. God damn it! I can't really pronounce their names all that well. So yeah.
Hey man, you gave them their names.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too. But it's probably because I can read them better in my mind rather than actually saying them.
All right, I'm I try to read them myself, but I can't read. I can't read.
You can't read. That
I
sounds.
can't read his handwriting.
Yeah, our dirty little secret is that he does everything through voice to text.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I can't read Beth's handwriting. Can you at least? That looks like. Is that supposed to say Russell Benoit?
Real Benoit.
Oh, he's the
But,
detective paladin, right? That
yeah.
Investigates the murder.
Yeah, he's the eccentric type that is. He's more like. For the most part, he's one of he has his own code of honor, so, and he does have his own philosophy of how things work. And if it falls in line with that, has a tendency to bend the rules a bit to make it work out that way.
He's kind of sounding more like what's the name of that? I don't want to say Columbo.
Yeah, you know something. I was going to say his name earlier, but I've had one of those moments where you don't remember the name.
How does that? How do you forget your own characters' names?
I'm talking about the character I picked him off of.
Oh,
because
okay.
because there are characters that I've used as models, such as Alpheus based on Sherlock Holmes.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, moving on. Jeffrey Bonnelly, who's fresh out of wizard training from Paladin Order.
Oh, is that why he's
19.
carrying that ridiculous focus?
Yes.
Yeah, for those who don't know, when a paladin inducts a wizard into the order, they are essentially indentured servants. And sometimes, if they have a particularly nasty sense of humor, they bind their power to a focus that is a silly, mundane object. Like in Casey Crumb's case, she has to carry a garden hoe around to use her power. And in in his case, looks like he has to carry around a golf club.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not fun being a wizard in the employ of the paladins.
Oh yeah, and he's basically brand new to the job, doesn't have the experience of any other wizards out there.
Mm-hmm.
So he's more or less going by Benoit's own standards.
Okay.
And yep.
And who's the pink-haired lass? She looks familiar.
Yeah, I wonder how. I wonder why. All right, you got Marla Queen over here, who is based off of who designed the Mythoverse logo.
Yeah, beautiful. Real quick, Gorgonite says, so you're saying at one point in time a paladin wizard had to wield a dildo? Very likely.
Let's be honest, if Regina from Rags was a wizard in Mythoverse, she'd probably do that.
Yeah, she'd wield a mighty green dildo.
Don't underestimate the power of the dildo, dude.
Oh, you never do.
Right now,
this is no joking matter.
I am now picturing. Did anyone play Saints Row the Third?
Yes.
In that game, one of the weapons was a giant purple dildo that you could whack people with.
That was one of the most bizarre games I've ever played.
And then Saints Row 4 happened.
Yeah, that was the intention.
Yep.
All right, so who's the next dude right there?
Terrell Rhodes, who is Alpheus' fiance.
Mm-hmm.
And he's another mythic. And they went through training together and eventually fell in love there. So in a way, I'll probably get some annoying critics who will say that ask me why I gave Althea a strong female protagonist a man. Well, why not?
Well, that's how we fill the world with humans. Okay, who's the Who's the nice looking blonde there at the end?
The blonde is the main villain.
Ah, nice.
So she's not very nice.
Okay, so she's nice looking, but she's not nice. Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome. So we can expect to see all these characters in issue 1 of Mythics.
Yep.
Nice. I love Bethy's designs. She's designed all of the characters in Mythics, right?
She has, and she's done an excellent job.
Yeah, to say the least. So, did you give her a description of each character, or did you just say, "Go crazy"?
I gave her descriptions. With Marla, told her, I gave her Lenore's Twitter account and said, "Go crazy, use her selfies."
Nice.
The only thing she asked was, "Does she want pink hair?" Which I said yes.
Wonderful.
Well, I actually was talking with Lenora on Discord last night, and she kind of liked that it was that the pink was kind of faded, which leads me to believe that Beth might have gone off one of her more recent pictures.
More than likely.
Yeah, but she liked that just because instead of her hair looking like it was freshly dyed, but then again, Morella's a. Is it going to be a spoiler if I say that Morella's a changeling?
Yeah, she's a changeling mythic.
Yeah.
Based on something that that Nora said.
Yeah.
On a poll.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. The characters all look great.
What I was gonna say though is because what Lenore said is hey, she's got glamour. She could make it whatever color she wants.
And if she wants to someone faded, she gets it that way.
Imagine if she does make it faded, she'll blend in a little bit better. So she doesn't look too perfect. She won't attract too much attention. So that's all fantastic, and I'm really excited to see this new artwork. I'm excited to see Mythics' Spirit Realm developing, because that's a very important part of the Mythoverse, because the way that the Mythics gain their power is through their affinity that they have to the spirits that dwell there. And certain of the Mythics end up being familiars that augment the Mythics' power. So, pretty cool. Always glad to see more of that stuff being developed. So, in other news, after getting back from her trip, Antonella is back into penciling the Mythochibis webcomic full steam. Supporters on the Mythoverse Patreon have already read it. And it will be published tomorrow for everyone else over at mythoversecomics.com. And she's already churned out yet another one, so that we have 2 in queue complete, and we're getting as many scripts over to her as we can. And speaking of the Patreon, what I ended up doing there is I just simply transitioned my old Molly Beans Patreon over to the Mythoverse, and let everyone know that it was transitioning, that Molly Beans was no longer updating. And some backers have stayed, and some have adjusted their pledges down to the new $1 tier. So thank you so much for that. They've decided to go on supporting our work. And the addresses to the Patreon and the Subscribe Star are scrolling down there along the bottom on our ticker. The Patreon is Mythoverse Comics, and the Subscribe Star is Mythoverse-Comics. Why they're different is because I made a mistake and I didn't feel like fixing it. So, if you elect to subscribe to us on either of those 2 sites, it's $1 a month, and all the money that we get goes straight back to our artists like Antonella and our voiceover artists that we're going to employ to put out our additional audio content sometime next month. So,
while we're on that subject, by the way, I was talking with Kylie earlier today, and she says that she's been having a little bit of laptop trouble, but she's going to be testing out Minecraft just to see if it's stable. She's hoping to be able to start streaming on Maeve's Twitch within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, cool. Yes, the Maeve Twitch, the link is in the description of this video. And that is some additional content that we're going to have in. Like Brett said, if you elect to subscribe to her on Twitch, she gets all the money. So we are not going to be profiting in any way off of her time role-playing as Maeve on her Twitch. she is going to get all of the benefits of her labor there. So, so that's pretty much all I wanted to discuss for the moment. There was just one more thing I wanted to talk about before we lay back a bit and chill and fire up a game. As the three head creators of the shared universe, I'd like us all to talk for a little bit on how the ideas came about and why we decided to pursue them in particular. So, Brett, Matt, does either you want to go first with regard to your properties?
Well, before I go off, another thing I want to mention is that Victor sketched out the final page for issue 1, and he is inking as we speak.
Yes, I was going to get to that. Leandro has turned in pages 11 through 13 for Adobe Kroger Dame Commander. They are incredible. He just needs to touch up the backgrounds a little bit. So we're well over the halfway. We're over the halfway mark for Adobe Kroger, and he's already hard at work on the next pages. So
Victor's pretty confident he can have this. He is pretty confident he can have the inking done by the middle of July, which is also good because Zeno told me that Ginger should be done with Sporkman by then as well. So she'll be able to get right to coloring and lettering changeling.
That's great
timing.
Right
when she gets done with Sporkman.
That's great timing. So it looks like we're well on our way to our fulfillment deadline of September 21st. I still think it's completely reasonable for all 3 books. But if there are any... Go ahead.
How's Beth, Matt?
Right now she's sick. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say that more likely going to be slower with the updates, but it's completely reasonable to have it done before the release date.
All right. Yeah. If we hit any snags, if like any of our artists have personal issues they have to deal with, or if they're sick, or if anything happens, we'll be sure to update the campaign, everyone in the Discord, and we'll be definitely talking about it here. So you'll all be notified well in advance if there will be any delays. But as of right now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. It looks like we're all on track because we still have plenty of time, and I want to make sure the artists don't have to rush. I told Leandro, like, quality first, because this is one of our launch titles, and I want it to be amazing. I want every one of these books to just be top shelf in their genres. So,
well, I guess with that out of the way, we should probably get to talking about how the origins behind our stories. So, how about you go, Matt?
Yeah, like what made you decide to focus your creative energies on Althea's story? First of all. Second of all, what made you decide to adapt the story of the Cunning Folk in particular? Like, what appealed to you about that mythology?
Well, to divert about making Mythoverse my priority, it's just that it seemed like now was the best time to do it with two other titles that are set in a very similar universe as Mythics. I decided that it'd be better to sell my other projects for this. It's the fact that Mythoverse was able to get funded in the first try shows I made a good decision. And the idea of the Cunning Folk, well, all I really have to say is that the idea of these magic users who don't use magic as a form of religion or an identity, rather than it was for the practical reason of having a second job, that just makes it rather appealing. It's different. It's something that a lot of writers tend to not do. Whenever you got a story about a witch, it's always based in pagan beliefs, but with the Cunning Folk, it was okay, here's magic. It's a tool, and we're willing to convert our religion to avoid getting killed.
Yeah, they're very practical minded. I mean, that's always been how they were from the get go, especially the way that they divided up the roles between the men and the women, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Although, it is interesting, I have to say that it depends on what you're reading. I think in some I've read that the women were witch hunters, and the men were storytellers because women weren't allowed to have an education.
I'm gonna guess that there's a lot of conflicting reports about them.
Yeah, because I think the majority of it is oral history.
Of course it is.
I mean, the men were the ones who were allowed to tell the stories. I don't think they wrote anything down, otherwise they would have been caught during the witch hunts.
So it ended up being like one of civilization's longest running game of telephone.
On the one hand, though, it's a. I would say stuff like this can be a blessing in disguise if you've got the right mindset because there's conflicting reports and not an agreed upon version. That kind of gives you a little more flexibility as a storyteller and a writer.
Pretty much.
Yeah, you can kind of you're basically allowed to take what you like and use it, and even add your own ideas into it.
It's like having a great public domain property that you can do anything with.
Mm-hmm. It is until you come across someone who holds these beliefs in a legitimate sense, then they get all freaked out. Because all scholars or believers or whatever, they all are convinced that they know the quote unquote true version of the myth.
Yep.
And I wasn't saying that to take the two.
I don't know. I'll just say the Greeks don't have to put up with this shit because at least they got a definitive version.
Yeah, very true.
I mean,
they almost say the same thing about the Norse.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the Norse sort of they didn't have a written language, but a lot of their stuff got preserved, and I think there's been enough of a canon that everyone sort of has a version they agree on. But yeah, it's just I'm just saying, hey, there's like I said, there's no with shit like Celtic mythology and the cunning folk, like nobody bothered writing this stuff down, so you can't really find a quote unquote definitive version. So why don't you just let the creatives just be creative with it and just like, for crying out loud, Matt's not adding his ideas because he thinks he can do it better. He's adding his ideas because one, he legitimately likes this kind of folklore, but the lack of definitive details means he kind of has to play fast and loose. So, but it's more done out of respect, and whatever ideas he adds it's done in service to that. Also, Alabaster says the Greeks don't really have a solidified version either. So many genealogies, even. I'm just saying, at least theirs is written down.
There's like a structure that you can't dispute. Like, for example, ranking of the gods and such.
Yeah, they have a canon. They have a sort of canon.
Yeah. And I wasn't trying to derail the conversation. I was just
all right.
It was just like and it's just something I've noticed is that people get really touchy when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I agree with what you were just saying because I'm actually looking forward to seeing like what Matt created in his, what his original ideas are going to be when he combines it with the things that he has had to research and look into.
Yeah.
Gorgonite says, stupid ancestors and their lack of paper and ink making skills. Yeah, those assholes. How dare they not have knowledge that we possess, thanks to their tireless efforts and hard thought.
Well, in the case of the cunning folk, I think it's more out of self-preservation than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the Mythoverse. Any evidence left behind that you are a practitioner of magic is surely fatal.
Yeah, in fact, that was something I was going to touch on, because before the Mythoverse, like, there was a reason for Althea to keep a low profile still, right?
Yeah, it was more out of, you don't want to use magic more often than it should be.
So it was kind of more like in Hellblazer, because like in like the old, and I'm talking like Vertigo Hellblazer, back in that, like, John Constantine, like, he almost would never use magic. It was something he only used if he absolutely had to. Otherwise, he just used his wits to get out of a bad situation.
I think it's more out of with how Gandalf rarely used magic himself.
Yeah, the Maya's power really lay in their ability to persuade and to lead than to actually shoot magic at people.
And I also just remembered Matt had never even gotten into Hellblazer until I told it to him about a year ago.
Funny thing is that even Beth thought I saw Althea with the Hellblazer similarities.
True.
Holy crap! You are right. I've never realized that Gandalf never did use magic, barely.
Yeah, only like off camera, kind of like when he was battling the Balrog. We never actually saw him do much than just flash light to blind goblins, or maybe it was all about like leading and persuading. That was his true power.
I think if you go by the movies, he used magic like all of 5 times at most, I think.
Yeah. And the first time you really just saw him use it was creating a storm inside of Bilbo's home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also his staff. I think he whacked people more with it than he actually did use spells to it.
Right.
Yep. True. That is also true.
It's so weird. That is so weird. I've never realized that.
A wizard that doesn't use magic.
Yeah, it was the same with Saruman. His power lay in his voice.
I'm gonna watch 9 hours of film just to reconfirm that.
Well, more like 12 hours if you're going with extended.
Oh God.
Gorgonite says, fact, Gandalf told the others to leave just so he could hug.
Yeah, you gotta love the guy in the party who goes off to go hog to get all the XP and good loot.
Yeah, well, it's because the damn halflings drew aggro on the whole damn dungeon, and they had to train like almost the entire dungeon out to the exit.
You want, to late into Dungeons and Dragons for a brief sec. Do you know that I think it was Gygax or whoever owned the Dungeons and Dragons at the time, like this was like back in the old days of D&D. They actually got sued by the Tolkien estate for the use of the word hobbit and ent.
Yeah. Because J.R.R. Tolkien had made up those words.
Yeah. Alabaster says TSR. Yeah, the Tolkien estate sued him for the use of those words, so they ended up changing them to halflings, and I think they changed the ends to what, treants?
Treants, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a movie that came out during the release of The Hobbit called The Age of Hobbits, and that got sued by Warner Brothers.
Damn. Yeah.
No, that's what happens when you build such a rich and detailed universe that essentially defines a genre. People are going to look to it for inspiration, and they're definitely going to be plagiarizing it.
Oh, yeah.
So, does it ever scare you guys that you'll ever just accidentally, use something that's copyright and you're not even aware of it?
I'm sure it's happened already. I mean, unconsciously. Like one of the characters whom I named, the wizard Casey Crumb. My mother actually has a friend named Casey Crumb, and I was completely unaware of it. I was like, I just wanted to make a silly alliterative name. It's not a reference. It's just a complete coincidence. Like eventually, it's gonna happen. The more you write, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever Google your name? Look at all the people who have your name.
Yeah.
Well, I got a cousin with the same name as me, so.
Yeah, I don't Google myself. I think I take that back. I do right before a job interview, just to make sure I can be ready for anything that they may have dug up. Not that I have anything embarrassing to hide.
As far as I know, that hasn't happened to me yet.
Alabaster said halfling was the
had the-
non-hobbit word for,
Oh,
well,
go
for hobbit. Yes, you're right. They did call them halflings as well. I guess they just didn't care about that being used.
I did have the unfortunate event occur when I Googled my name, and the first thing that popped up was a Florida man story.
Oh.
Were you a Florida man?
No, I was not a Florida man, and I never will be a Florida man.
So some Florida man stole your identity so he could pin his antics on you.
Oh,
What a surprise.
Leave it to Florida man. Holy cow.
Actually, I actually will take that back. If you did Google my name, let's just say if you Googled my name, you would find someone people would recognize instantly.
Yeah, so Brett, you were once in a cult?
Maybe.
Problem with my name is when you Google my name, you just get a bunch of historical sites, or you get the picture of the cat, or unfortunately you get a bunch of, because a lot of people use the witch trials as like a a reference for a bunch of feminist stuff. You get a bunch of blue-haired people in the results, so it's usually not too fun. But like I said, you'll sometimes get the occurrence of getting Florida man come up in your feed. So,
did you hear about the Florida student who hacked the school to notify everyone that there will be mandatory penis inspections? And
Oh my God.
and there was a meme made out of that with Tony Stark knighting Peter Parker and saying, "Congratulations, you're an Avenger," and Tony was labeled Florida man. So, anyway, before we get too far off track here,
sorry.
Brett, why don't you tell us about A, like what made you decide to focus on Changeling, and B, what made you decide to want to write about a Changeling?
Yeah. Okay, so the short version of the story is that where Maeve came from originally was another idea for a book I had that I ended up abandoning, and just so everyone knows, the Maeve in that story was a little bit of a different character, but I liked the name, and the reason why is because when I was 15, I was addicted as fuck to Warcraft 3 campaign. Well, the hero character in that was Maeve's Shadow Song, the Night Elf Warden. Everyone who's played WoW probably knows obviously knows who she is. And I liked the name. Then I found Maeve, and my stupid ass assumed, this must be an alternative spelling for Maeve. I like, and that's a name I like. So I ended up using it. It wasn't until like about a year ago that my best friend ended up correcting me on the pronunciation. But yeah. And how it got to Changeling in its current form was that when I kind of saw that at least in our circles there were not a lot of nobody was really making a comic that had a more young adult centered audience. They were all going after the more they were going after the more mature audience, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it kind of, let's just say there was a lack of audience diversity. Because like, I mean, if you want to make someone a comic fan for life, you kind of have to hit them when they're young. And everyone was making a book that was pretty much everyone I knew was making a book that was geared more towards a more mature audience. Exception being Chuck, who made Sporkman for all ages. So I just decided to throw my hat in the ring with a more young adult-centered title.
It seems to have done very well for you. Maeve's really taken off without even her book being finished.
Yeah, so. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I never thought I would say this about a character I made, but she ended up having a really iconic appearance. It's like her design is very simple, but like almost anyone can draw it, but almost everyone who has drawn it says that she's fun to draw. Like artists like drawing her.
Yeah, she's got the pointed ears, the white skin, the spiky hair, the red eyes. Those are all fun.
Well, not just that, it's also like I don't know. Maybe she was just scratching an itch that people didn't even know was there for a while. Not like that.
Well, I'm sure that once these people and everyone get a chance to read her story, they'll connect with her all the more.
Yeah, and which is everyone who has who's been more privy to some of the story details that I haven't dropped publicly. They all say that about her, like she feels like a real person.
And that's the key. Make them care. You can make your story about anything you want. It can have any setting, any genre. As long as they care about the character, they'll get along with you for the ride.
Yeah, I would kind of say Dan Harmon is he's kind of wrong when he says you got to rely on outlandish premises to keep audiences' attention.
Not necessarily. You just got to make them care about your cast. That's all. It can be about anything. Yeah. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I've always connected with a wide variety of genres all through the characters first.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing about the Changeling, though, is like I've always been fascinated with Celtic mythology, and I sort of I was really into White Wolf's Changeling the Lost for a while. I never really played it with anyone, but I really liked just reading the books. Found the lore interesting, and it's just like what I kind of liked about it was sort of like how it did not portray the Fae in like this fanciful light. Like they were equal parts beautiful and terrifying. And that was something that kind of really appealed to me.
Alabaster asks, did it happen when you found out about your Irish heritage? That's how I fell down the hole.
No. Nah, kind of more after. Well, yeah.
I was actually about to ask you something about that, Brett. Do you feel like you're, I don't know, do you feel like that you are contributing to the, to a bigger picture that has been laid out by generations before you?
Maybe, I don't know. It's just like I just had this idea in my head that I wanted to get out, and I think most of it just came from the fact that the character of Maeve was just one I didn't want to let go to waste. Even if her character sort of changed from one story to the other, like just because like the basic idea behind her in the original story I came up with was that she was a teenage changeling. She was kind of a banshee, but she was also a teenage runaway. Like it was. I kind of wanted to retool her in what I thought would be a more down to earth sort of setting. And the reason why the book ended up getting set in Aberdeen was because like when I settled on the title Urban Fairy Tale, I thought to myself, okay, so what kind of place could I put this in that would fit at that setting, get that fairy tale atmosphere? well, I kind of knew I had to axe Seattle right off the bat, just because it's a big city. I knew I wanted it set in Washington, because that's that's my backyard. I did not want to set in Tacoma because, I love Tacoma, but something about it just did not feel right. And then it just hit me. Aberdeen is a small town that is surrounded by forest area. It's like right in that sweet spot. It's got enough of an urban center that it feels like it's set in the modern day, but it's also isolated enough that you can still get that fairy tale atmosphere, which is what a lot of those settings are. They're set out they're set away from the big city. They're set out in they're isolated. There's always usually a dense forest or mountains, something away that gets you away from civilization.
It lets you have that call to action, because you have to have a simple life to be called away from to go on an adventure.
Exactly.
That's why, the hobbits start out in the Shire. That's why all these hero's journey stories usually start on a farm that's far from the city, because the character needs to want more out of their life.
Well, I won't say that Maeve isn't going to exactly leave Aberdeen just yet.
Yeah, she's still a little young for that, but...
Well, she's still in high school, for one.
Well, I can definitely say, after having a little bit of inside knowledge, she has some incredible adventures ahead of her, so you guys are going to love them. Trust me.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, most definitely. But yeah, that's kind of what's been... But yeah, the thing that I think I find really appealing is sort of kind of getting away from this popular image of fairies as being of being playful and inviting, and think less. It's less Tinkerbell and more, I guess you could say, White Witch from Lion Witch in the Wardrobe. Like I said, I like this idea that they're of these almost alien beings that are equal parts beautiful and terrifying.
Yeah, the White Queen Jadis,
Brett,
I think her name is, fits that description perfectly.
Yeah. Not the White
Brett,
Queen.
have you?
Well, she was a queen originally.
Yeah. You were saying, Salem?
Oh, I was just gonna ask. Have you seen the show The Ancient Magnus Bride?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I was gonna say, are you getting you're aiming a little more towards instead of just kind of like how that show did, where it's not just one element of fantastical or blood curdling. It's kind of like an organic, well-rounded world. You get a little bit of everything.
Pretty much. I mean, like I said, the Fae aren't complete monsters. There's just the best way I can describe them is that Organite says, aren't fairies in their original folklore total assholes? It's more like getting into it.
Fae's kind of an umbrella term.
Yeah, let me put it this way: getting into a deal with a fairy it's ill-advised, because they will find, in a lot of these stories, they will find ways to sort of bend the rules in their favor. More or less honoring the letter of the deal without honoring the spirit. So it's they'll say, I didn't break the rules, and they'll still find a way to screw the human over. And
I've heard it described as they're kind of imagine Loki, but in a much more cynical form.
You could say that it's just more like the way, because the thing that kind of characterizes the Fae across the board is they lack empathy.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a capacity for it. They look at humans, and to them, these are just things that, at best, are just quaint curiosities to them and things they can play around with. So if a fairy tricks you, it's because they thought it would be funny.
I can only assume that when Maeve learns more about her Fae heritage, a lot of that will come into play in the story.
Yeah, I guess. Expect stuff that's like a ancient Magus bride, Lion Witch in the wardrobe. Like the key thing to keep in mind is that with the Fae, nothing is what it seems.
Yeah, if it helps, just imagine like if you didn't have to worry about dying, like why would you be in a hurry to do anything? And what would you think about a short-lived quaint race that was always in such a rush to accomplish things that mean nothing because you're dead the next day from their point of view. So who cares?
Yeah, it's kind of like the way people look at ants.
Exactly. Like look at all that effort they're putting into building these intricate tunnels in the anthill when I can just step on it and it's gone. So yeah, that's really interesting. Really really cool, Brett. So, moving on to my answer to this question. Adobe Kroger is a hybrid of two characters and an enormous preference for certain aspects of Western civilization and real Western history. The two characters that she's based on, I created them when I was around 19 or so, I would say. Way back when I was thoroughly obsessed with Rumiko Takahashi's style of storytelling. I say that like I'm still not obsessed with it. She's still one of my biggest artistic influences, as anyone who reads my strips can probably infer. So the two characters were a young and inexperienced pyromancer named Ryo and her sardonic cousin, Anima, who is also a pyromancer. I ended up merging Ryo's skill level and confidence with Anima's personality. So what I had was a young and inexperienced, very potty-mouthed and cynical individual. Adobe was much more vulgar in her early form than she ended up being presently. And so my mind started to wonder, okay, now that I have this character, what does she do for a living? I thought the best profession for someone with that attitude and the tendency to freely swear is the lawful goody two-shoes paladin, obviously. So I found that to be a very amusing juxtaposition. So with all of that, I just needed to give her a name. She didn't have a name yet. And I wanted the name to be distinctive. I didn't want it to be something that could be confused with anything else. So I decided it had to be silly but memorable. So I was working on Adobe Photoshop at the time. So I just said, okay, there's her first name. But what about her last name? So from there, my mind started to wander, and I saw a Pac-Man poster I had on my wall. And the Pac-Man poster triggered a memory of when I was 5 or 6 playing Pac-Man in an arcade console at a Kroger supermarket. So I said, there's her last name, Adobe Kroger. It was complete serendipity, an accident, but I ended up liking it, so I kept it. And as for her middle name, I decided that, well, since she's AK, let's give her a humiliating set of initials. So I just picked a name that started with F, Francine, so that her initials could be AFK, and that could be something that she was made fun of for. So there we have it. That's where she came from. And the fact that I am sort of a Western chauvinist, you could say. I love the philosophy, I love the history, I love all aspects of it, warts and all, because, without Western civilization, there just wouldn't be the world we have today, even with all the bad things that they've done simultaneously. The Greco-Roman philosophy, Christianity, all the traditions of the European nations, it's always enthralled me. So she had to be a paladin, and that had to be steeped in, the Carolingian mythos. And I decided to set her in the modern day so that I could have a lot of fun with a modern girl in this ancient civilization and ancient things being juxtaposed together. So I ended up having a lot of fun with that. I ended up coming up with this concept while I was driving to work around 5:30 or 6 a.m. one morning, because I had to be in early for a release, and it was quiet, and I had the whole back roads commute to myself, so I just started playing some power metal to wake myself up. And my favorite band at the time was Freedom Call, and the song Warriors came on, and I just got totally pumped up. And by the end of that week, I had 50,000 words of the novel written. So I was full steam ahead on this with this character. and I've just had a lot of fun with her ever since. And I've wanted to make a comic out of her. I just never really had the time to sit down and draw it the way I want to. Even when I was doing a webcomic, I only had a couple of hours to spare to sit down and produce it. So I knew if I wanted to do this, I would have to find an artist that could really knock it out of the park. And I was fortunate enough, after a lot of trial and error and a lot of commissions and a lot of flaking out, came across Leandro, and here we are. So that's pretty awesome.
Which is a very good place to be.
Yes, I am very, very happy where we are right now. The novel's finished. There's an audiobook that is available on Audible. It's called Adobe Kroger Knight Errant. So if you want to learn a little bit more about her, it's all told from her point of view, first person. And it's read by an exceptionally talented voiceover artist, Addison Peacock, who is Adobe Kroger's voice. I cannot imagine anyone else doing it.
By the way, are there plans to adapt that Knight Errant into a comic?
Yep, there absolutely is. If there's enough interest in Dame Commander as a comic series to justify making more, absolutely. I'm gonna take her whole story all the way down through to the end.
I have to wonder, Dan. How much of a challenge would it be to sort of take everything you wrote in a prose novel and then adapt it to a comic script?
I imagine it wouldn't be no trivial matter. I do know that there were some Arcaven titles that tried to do just that, and it came off as like, this is just a novel with some pictures. Like, there's way too much dialogue. There's everything, because you can't really tell a story from a novel to a comic the same way. You can't just rely on telling everyone everything, because then you might as well just write a novel. So it really comes down to like extracting out the key scenes and the key dialogue and finding a way to take paragraphs of description and just put it into a panel or two. So I imagine it would be a little bit challenging, especially because Adobe Kroger is like 140,000 words or more. So that will be a Herculean task to turn that into a comic script that flows in the same way and is pleasing. Because I think a lot of the things that made the story fun was all of her internal dialogue, because she there's a lot of introspection, a lot of memories and all of that. And it's really fun, and everyone says they love her voice. And translating that to a comic could be challenging.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think you really got to get too worried about, like, cutting out her internal dialogue that much, because, I mean, like, that was a big part of Daredevil when Frank Miller took it over. I mean, like, he put in a lot of internal, he did a lot of that stuff just to give it that hard-boiled noir feel.
Yeah. Alabaster says, "Oh my God, the name came from exactly where I thought it did." Yeah, it's exactly the first things you think of. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be a very fun but challenging project, because all throughout the novel, unlike in Dame Commander, where she's got all of her badass kit, like both of her swords and all of her holy regalia, in Adobe Kroger she has nothing. So it's like Black Widow on Laundry Day, no gear, nothing. So think of it as Black Widow meets John McClane in an episode of Jack Bauer's 24, and that is Adobe Kroger Knight Errant. Okay, so we're just about done with our first hour here. So this is the part where we throw our heads back and laugh, right? No, actually, this is where I spin the game up. And we can just talk about whatever we want. And if there's anyone in the chat that's in our Discord and wants to hop in and talk with us in the voice channel, please do so. I'm going to.
I got someone I got someone I can grab.
Yeah, grab away.
Oh.
I'm going to be playing Stardew Valley tonight in honor of the fact that my wife and I are going to be buying a couple acres of land and building it up from nothing. So this is going to be fun. We're going to start with putting an RV on it, maybe camping on it for a little bit, with our goal to put like a prefab house and maybe some chickens and a horse, maybe. Mm-hmm. It'll be a lot of fun. It's our dream to own like a big plot of land out in the middle of the country and just relax. So, to that end, I will fire up Stardew Valley. In the meantime, Brett, go ahead and get whoever you want to come in. And again, if you're in the chat, if you're in the Discord, hop in.
Yeah. I sent a DM to Lenore. I don't know if she'll respond to it, though.
Aw. Lenore. Why won't you ever come onto our streams?
Well, if it's 7 out here, it's gonna be. That means it's 9 out in Texas.
Yep.
And which means she may or may not be getting ready for bed because she has to get up pretty early for her job.
That's fine.
So.
Alabaster, why don't you hop in and see how it sounds?
He says, meant to have it ready for this week, but I'm looking for a new car and getting my room painted. You could grab it, but I'd rather figure out the proper EQ levels for this new mic. And Alabaster says, in Texas, can confirm. Oh, so it's So Adobe's the one playing.
Yeah, she's gonna have a farm now.
You know what is funny? I think I remember. I think Salem and Matt were in on this. There was one time we were hanging out in the General VC, and a Demon Eater was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And no joke, he asked me if Adobe was based off of Vamp.
Nope.
Obviously, I ended up having to laugh and say, no, she's not.
Yeah. Vamp is absolutely her own entity.
Yes.
Right.
They have not yet been absorbed. This will be remedied soon enough.
Oh, hey, Brez.
Hello, friend.
Yeah. Are you going for her combat regalia in there, Dan, or are you gonna put her in her? Are you gonna? Well, you probably can't do her Crusader hoodie.
Nah, I wish I could. I would probably have to mod the game to do that.
What are you playing at the moment?
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley, in honor of the fact that I'm
next
actually buying farmland soon. So.
I've just been up Terraria and trying to think of how best to write this thing.
Dan's doing Stardew Valley, and the character in this one is Adobe.
Yep, Adobe is starting a new farm.
She's just a simple farmer tending to her memes.
That is exactly correct.
What are you
Yes,
using the
man.
land for? Moos, horses. I think in Stardew Valley you just harvest crops.
No, there are horses and cows and whatnot.
Yep, you can raise animals and you can get horses. It just takes a little bit of time to earn them.
Yep. Meanwhile, I'm over here playing.
Courtney asks, can you at least Deus Vult banjo breaking infidels?
Well, if you want to see some banjo action, read the book.
Listen, all I'm saying is Terraria is better than fighting.
Oh yeah, the combat in Stardew Valley is kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, but Terraria is just good.
Terraria, I love Terraria. I haven't played it in at least 2 years, but I always had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. Although to be fair, I think I always kind of got the vibe that Stardew Valley was kind of made in the vein of what was that game? Animal Crossing?
Or Harvest Moon, I think.
Harvest Moon, yeah, that was it. I think it was Harvest Moon.
Yeah, it is unashamedly a Harvest Moon clone. The only difference really is that there's more emphasis on personal relationships with the townspeople.
So it's a game about feelings.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's talk about our feelings. Yes.
Hot take here. Rune Factory. Best.
I haven't played it, so I can't comment.
But yeah. I was kind of impressed when not only did Victor turn in the final sketch for the final page today, like without I asked him like when do you plan on starting to ink this? He said I'm working on it right now. It's like that dude is that guy is a machine.
Well, I think it helps his motivation to know that he is penciling a successfully crowdfunded book with an audience.
Well, definitely. I mean, like he has told me that he is completely committed to seeing this through. So yeah, and I guess having a successful Kickstarter campaign with a built-in audience ready to go definitely.
Yeah, that would motivate me. If I knew that my work was part of a campaign that people were paying for, sure.
Yeah. Central asks,
You mean
is there a
money motivates people?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Believe it or not.
Especially artists who, let's be honest, are just very accustomed to being abused. So if they're actually being paid and treated well, then I imagine that's a huge boon to their productivity.
Central is asking if there's a bar in the village.
There is a bar in the village, and you can drink beer.
There better be, or it's not a village.
Yeah.
Well, better be because Adobe has a drinking problem.
Yeah, she definitely does. And like I always say,
I need to find a way to get into the Mythoverse somehow and hang out with Adobe.
you may regret that.
No, because we are gonna go drinking.
Okay,
and we are gonna have a contest.
Well, just so you know, she can stop herself from getting drunk. She just chooses not to.
And I will also say, okay, Salem, do you know the story about how Dave Mustaine got kicked out of Metallica?
Refresh my memory.
Okay, so I forget if it was Kirk or James, but one of them said, "We were a bunch of goofy drunks, and Dave was an angry drunk."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But here's the thing: you won't be able to, you won't know this because you guys have met me IRL. But understand, I am someone who doesn't matter what kind of drunk you are. Once I am drunk and you are drunk, we're gonna be best friends.
Yeah, that reminds me of that sequence in.
It's not you I'm worried about drunk. It's Adobe.
I have never.
Setral says, "Are there any girls there?" I assume you mean in the pub, and if so, I want to do them. Yeah, that's the thing about this game is regardless of your character's gender, you can romance anybody. So, and eventually you can have the entire village fall madly in love with you.
Of course, they'll also get mad.
Adobe slurring. It's not a want. I can quit whenever I problem.
Yeah. One of the first major bursts of action in the novel occur after she gets smashed.
In sober person talk, that means I have had a few, and I am able to communicate with words. Just the words are a little out of order. Therefore, please bear with me, and I will get back to your call. Drunkenness is a foreign language. You do need to, you do need a little bit of practice in order to understand what's being said.
I can't believe it. Adobe got sluggish from overexertion, and all she did was water plants.
Well, she is incurably lazy.
How does she? It makes you wonder how she manages to keep a job.
Well, that's why she picked a job where she can just sit and stare at a screen and type.
I don't know. Still, look, I know nothing about coding, and even I know it is not a job where you are going to get very far if you're lazy or especially careless.
Nah, she takes her job very seriously.
Keep notes, you'll be fine. From what I've heard.
She takes her job seriously because she doesn't have to deal directly with people. She's not terrible at dealing with things.
Yeah. It's just like, it's just more like, oh, I don't have to talk to people. I can just sit in front of a computer screen and type out code.
Exactly. That's why she ended up pursuing that career, because she can do just that. Yeah, the few times where she was asked to take on a leadership position, she usually ends up stuttering to death. All right.
Central says subtle dead Alewives reference.
Nice.
But I know what that is.
Winning. Yep.
It's kind of amazing that anyone would consider anyone, much less Maeve, would consider Adobe a role model.
Yeah. Well, to be
Well,
fair,
she's probably now just my guess, but if Maeve is growing up, she's probably admiring the fact that someone who is clearly struggling is still trying to push through her everyday life.
that's one way of looking at it. Another thing is, Adobe is a mess on the inside, but she still gets stuff done.
So, I'm gonna have a question.
Yeah, Briz?
What's your thing you're most excited to write about in the future?
I kind of like writing the emotional scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's as much as corny as it sounds, I kind of want the book to get people in the feels.
Sorry, sweetie, don't worry about this.
Fine. Feel you.
I couldn't tell you. I was trying to tell you here in case you're...
That being said, I also like the fantasy elements a whole fucking lot.
Yeah.
I didn't want to message you and...
To be honest, I'm
that
excited to
was
get to
Discord. I
write
didn't think of
what I'm
Discord.
gonna
I went
get
to
to
Slack, I
write
went to
if this
Facebook,
goes
and
through.
What if we do the thing out of Discord so you can message me?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Sorry.
Isn't Jeremy Setral? Yes. Yeah, so I thought Jeremy Lindsay, right?
Mhm.
Okay, alright, cool.
Continue,
I'm
Briz.
changing where I'm going to be taking. Possible. I guess that's kind of just the process.
Well, the most important thing you can at this stage is find a direction you can stick to.
Well, I already know what generally I want to do. I'm just more, how am I going to do it? What am I going to do to specifically get there?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, figuring out the details.
Yeah, how far am I gonna go with it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there's like what I've found out is that there's like 3 types of writers: planners, planters, and pantsers.
Huh?
What happened to your phone?
Dropped it.
What's the middle?
The indestructible phone, finally.
Well,
Okay, so the thing is,
it's 2.5 years
Yeah.
old.
planners, they are people who micromanage their stories. They plan everything down to the smallest detail.
Love you.
Can anyone think of a good story that's definitely a plan? That's definitely has a planned feel to it.
Stephen King's The Stand was one of the most thoroughly planned books he ever wrote. Usually he just writes as he goes, but in that case he really had a thorough outline to it.
So yeah, I mean, like the thing with like planned stories is they feel like they have focus, but at the same time, I think the problem is the characters can come off feeling like they don't have a lot of agency, and that at the event, and they're more reacting to the events around them, and they can also be a little bit on the predictable side. Planters are people who just is exactly what it sounds like. They plant story seeds and they see where it goes. They might have a general idea of where the story's going, but they sort of are working out the details as they're continuing in it, and that has
That's different.
Say what?
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that planter stories, they feel like the characters are the ones driving it. They feel like they're the one, they have agency, and the events matter. Of course, the problem is that I think the only problem with planting is that it's figuring out what ideas to keep and which ones to not use.
Yeah.
The final then the final one I know is Pantsers, which is literally making shit up as you go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having a hard time thinking of anyone who's pulled that off.
Anyone who D&D DM sounds like that.
Yeah, but but when you're doing a tabletop RPG, you would expect to make it up as you go. Alabaster says most shonen manga. Well, I guess you could say JoJo definitely makes its story up as it goes. I think even a Rocky's cop to that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that manga does for sure, because they're character driven, not really event driven.
No, but actual plot, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like go ahead.
By the way.
Say your thing, Brez.
He has a character sheet he made that he fills out for every single one, and he makes the character, then makes the stamp.
Yeah, but the plot. Yeah, but the actual plot.
The other way around. I think it might have been the other way around. About it.
I don't know. I just remember reading somewhere that he's admitted that he doesn't really know the plot, where the plot of his stories are going. He just kind of makes it up as he goes.
Yeah, the story will go where the story wants to go.
Yeah. Now the problem with that sort of style of storytelling is that it can feel very aimless and directionless, especially if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. If you're not paying attention to what you're doing, it can also be very inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like but the takeaway from that little spiel is that there's no right way to do this. Like, everyone has their method that works for them, and me, like, I would say I'm definitely more of a planter. I kind of have a general idea of where the story's going, but how my characters are getting there, like the details in between, that's kind of shit I'm making up as I go along. But ultimately, I just want the characters to feel like their decisions matter. Like, it's more about the little decisions they make, and seeing how the consequences play out. That's what I find appealing.
Yeah, to be honest, wait, don't we have a thing where we meet up and talk about writing stuff? I can't remember.
We do have a writer's room, yeah.
It's just I have some stuff. To be honest, I kind of just want to discuss my ideas at the moment. You know? And see what people...
Well, you can talk about it here if you like.
Yeah.
I'm up for that, y'all.
Oh yeah, and if you're in the writer's room, if you have the writer's role, feel free to drop your ideas in there.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
Gorgonite says, I am too anal to be a planter or pantser. I must have a solid foundation and roadmap. Like I said, there's no right way to do it. Everyone has their way that works for them.
In the end, as long as your story gets complete and people get to read it, who cares?
Unless you're Stephanie Meyer, in that case, you are wrong every way you go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just have a definite point I want to take the lead, and I kind of have a message. Or a theme, would be a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Now, again, as Brett said, everyone's different. But for me, if I decide that the story is to have a theme, I usually let that emerge organically. I try not to start with a theme.
I currently have a set of ideas of where I want to go with things because that's what I want to write, you know? And I like it, and I believe I've discussed it before. I know Salem knows about it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I talked about it on your server, I
Mm-hmm.
believe.
Yeah.
That's my general idea, and I know I want to get to that, because that's what I want to write.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like something that would be very right. Oh shit, King Slime. Oh shit, what? When can it do that? Sorry, I'm also playing Terraria at the moment.
It's alright.
It's fine. No, it's fine. I mean, like, I would definitely say that the three of us are definitely, like, we probably have definitely planters. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the vibe. That's sort of the vibe I get off Matt and Dan.
Yep. I mean, I knew where I wanted the Adobe Kroger novel to end, but so many things that occurred along the way happened more or less spontaneously as Adobe told me how she would react.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel, but I also know where I definitely want the characters to end up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like, I have plot points I want to hit. And I kind of want to hit a couple of them maybe earlier than I probably should. But...
yeah. Like Brett said, the biggest challenge when you're doing that is to make sure that you don't pull your characters on puppet strings to make sure that the story goes where it needs to go. It can be tricky.
Yeah.
I did tell you about the ideas I had and where I wanted to take this, right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's just like
that fits and all, right? Does that work?
Yep.
Because I'm
Gorgon,
not gonna like spill it over into everything ever, of course.
It's all right.
It's not gonna screw everything. But there's gonna be.
Gorgonite says I actively avoid purposely putting in themes whenever I can because it seems like the go-to excuse for lazy writing nowadays. Cough, The Last Jedi. Cough.
Well, essentially, I'm gonna talk about it a bit here since I've already mentioned it.
Yeah.
I'm writing a story about Alfar, and I was like, okay, what else can I do to make this neat? And I was like, okay, Light Elves and Dark Elves, what's the difference there? One is in charge, the other is my current idea. And I thought, okay, how can I make that more? I've already made Alfar more using psychic stuff to describe magic, and I was like, okay, what can you do with that? And I thought, hive mind. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then I took the logical route from there. You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's kind of like I would say what half of writing is just saying, "Hey, this is a cool idea. What can I do with that?"
Yeah, and then I was like, "Okay, what can I do with that?" 'Cause, I mean, writing for fun is fun, but I would like to have some form of thing I'm trying to say, at least a little bit. And I thought the merits of monarchies, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of that, their point of view, is the more people you have in your little group, or eventually massive one, is the more power you have to pull around places.
Yeah, it's I mean, like that's something that gets talked about in a lot of it comes up a lot in King Arthur stories about like what it means to wear that crown and the responsibility that comes with it.
Yeah, and what happens when you get someone who is absolutely evil in charge or absolutely terrible?
Yeah, there's even a couple Shakespeare plays that delve into that. Like, you got Henry V, which is all about like Henry sort of growing past his wild youth and maturing and taking up his throne and leading England to victory against the French. And then you got Richard III, where he's power hungry and is actively conspiring against everyone to seize power for himself.
Yeah, essentially, these are some things I haven't gone over with y'all yet. Some here as well.
Yeah.
The reason elves aren't everywhere anymore is because one of them decided, hey, no, hold on. I can just take what power I have and kill everyone else who can get it and keep it myself. And the people who saw that coming skedaddled the place where their power was much less, power. And the universe would smack them in the face via other people if they tried to pull shit. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's essentially what I'm excited to write, because eventually I do want the main character to reach a position of power like that decently early on, so we can explore that. Because it's not like a full-on hive mind, it's more like a network, I guess.
Yeah.
You can't completely override a person, but you have power and sway.
I think I kind of know what you're talking about, because like this was something that came up in the Styx games, that the elves, they sort of had this like they had this hive mind where they could telepathically communicate with one another.
Yeah, but
And-
basically you can also pull magic from your subjects, push it where you want it to go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To a degree. If enough people said, no, fuck you, essentially. I don't know what the Styx games are.
Yeah, it comes back and just, but yeah, I mean, like sort of the idea where you're talking about like how when you've got that much power concentrated in one person, you better make sure the right person is wielding it.
Essentially, yeah. You need a mix of hero and monster in the same person. That's really rare to be a good monster.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to be ruthless, but also not horrible evil.
Oh no, Adobe is sad because the bar is closed.
It doesn't open until noon.
Oh no.
I can't get drunk till noon. So when the clock strikes noon, I will go back there and get drunk.
You know, it was one of the best things I loved about living in the UP.
What's that?
They
What?
ignored all the alcohol laws where it's like you can't serve alcohol till 12.
They didn't even card us, dude. Yeah, we have to remember this place.
Yeah, it's well, you walk in. I walked in at like 9:30, and I told her, hey, look, I know it's not 12, but can you please? She's like, it's the UP. Here you go.
Fantastic.
And and then it got even better because then the person, the bartender decided to give me a double with charging me a single. So it was a win-win for me.
Sounds
Holy
good.
Shit, I'm a mom.
Sounds good, Alabaster.
Really? I can't hear a thing on this other end.
Oh, we can hear you.
I heard him say test. That was it.
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah, I think everybody heard. Yeah. But I kind of imagine that if Adobe's having a bad enough day, she'll wake up and she'll just she'll start the day off with like. Does anyone remember breakfast beer from the second season of The Wire?
Breakfast beer.
I never
Yes.
watched The Wire.
Okay, well, in the second season, it was focusing on the dock workers, and one day,
Oh, I remember seeing that from a binging.
yeah, and how they would always start the day is they'd hit up a bar, and they'd get what was called a breakfast beer, which was basically a beer served with an egg in it.
Okay.
Wow, that sounds disgusting.
Adobe's just gonna wait by the front door of the saloon for it to open.
So she went right her fridge and just start the day off with a drink.
Well, if any one of the writers have had a chance to look at her backstory, there's a reason that she overindulges in substances. It's really the only way she can feel normal.
She has a long history of substance abuse.
Yeah, very long, very tragic.
Honestly,
that can work with the character though.
Yeah, it is. Like, yeah, I mean, like even Regina from Rags has a drinking problem too.
Or Philip Marlowe, because I know that
be very common in me.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying that Adobe's done enough drugs and booze that even David Lee Roth would tell her to lay off.
It's like, well, do you want to pump the brakes for a second there, chickie?
Yeah. And again, I'm just gonna point it out. I just want to point out, like, it's David Lee Roth, the dude. It was one of the hardest partying rock stars to ever live. Well, he's still alive, technically.
Well, that just means he hasn't done enough drugs.
Why do I keep getting vile thorn? I keep getting them, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, he's like, Jesus, he's 64.
It's real hard being into classic rock because you're like, oh, when does this person go on tour? Because I really like their music. Oh no, they died back in like the 60s or 70s after a binge. Oh,
Yeah.
I got a real funny one for you. I shit you not, this is completely 100% true. An ex-friend, she had a classmate that recently had gotten into Nirvana. And now when she was asking her which songs she liked, of course she listed the basic bitch ones. But here's where it gets funny. She said, I can't wait to see them play live. And it's like...
That's tragic.
And of course the friend said, like, yeah, you'll see him play live when Kurt Cobain comes back to life. I don't know. That's something... If someone said they can't wait to see Nirvana want to play live, I would savor that moment instead of ruin it. Like, just like... I'll just say, yeah, it'll be awesome. And then they find out that Kurt blew his head off with a shotgun.
Yeah. There's a character in The Preacher based on that tragic event. All right.
Yeah, I think his name was Assface.
Yeah, because he tried to blow himself away and lived.
Yep.
I was born the year that Nevermind came out, and I don't know, I just never really got into Nirvana. Like, everyone else around me did, but...
You have to be from Dan's generation, I think, to really appreciate it.
Yeah, like I was telling Brett, well, through Adobe anyway, was I think one of the reasons they took off was that was one of the first times people of our generation were able to point to a noteworthy band that wasn't from our parents' generation. Because one thing the boomers were proud of, it was the music, that they were accidentally born around the time that it was created. So we had the Beatles and the Doors and the Who and all that stuff shoved down our throats for our entire lives. And finally we had this new band that changed the face of music for a few years. And we were able to, like, sort of say, hey, this is our stuff now. So stop pestering us, boomers. At least that's how I saw it.
Didn't your generation also kind of have Led Zeppelin?
And they're definitely a boomer band, but the thing is, you know, kids love classic rock. I mean, I think that's why.
That's because classic rock is good.
Yeah, well, classic rock is good, and it's all relative. Like a lot of younger folks started getting into Nirvana like 20 years after their heyday, much in the same way that I got into Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin 20 years after theirs.
Yeah.
But yeah, from where I sit, that's why that's why Nirvana was a little bit more significant than other bands for me personally.
Yeah, from my generation, My Chemical Romance and Linkin Park.
It's all really depends on like what's going on in your life and how they happen to accidentally affect you emotionally. That makes them meaningful for you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like, I mean, like everyone sort of knocks Nirvana and grunge for being angsty, but then it was like Linkin Park came around and said like, we'll show you what angst really looks like. And then you got Crawling.
Yeah, I think, you know, this isn't necessarily true for all grunge bands, but a lot of the ones I listened to, it tended to be less angsty and more like aimless. Like there, like Smells Like Teen Spirit wasn't really about anything, and that was kind of the point.
Yeah, I know. Like,
it's
I mean, like you can't...
a generation that has no direction and no guidance, and it's like, okay, now what do we do? Well, like they said in Fight Club, I don't know, go to college, and then what? I don't know, start a family. And then what? I don't know. Like that was the extent of the guidance we tended to get.
Yeah, like I guess I compare that to Linkin Park, where it was just more about like everything in my life sucks, and I don't, and I'm pissed off about it.
Yeah, there's definitely
Yeah.
that. Then you had Primus, where it's like everything is just ridiculous and they blow it up and laugh at it.
Yeah.
I love Primus.
Yeah, then, with although I think with My Chemical Romance, I think kind of what gave him a little more depth beyond just being like, I would never call him emo because even Gerard said like, he's not the biggest fan of emo. He never saw My Chemical Romance being that kind of band. What I kind of appreciated about My Chemical Romance, what I think gave the band a little more depth was that if you actually kind of pay attention to the lyrics, there's actually you can tell that they're trying to tell a story with them. It's not like it's not just like it's not just a bunch of teen angst and shit. Like I think the Black Parade, it's all about I think the Black Parade is all about this one guy who's on his deathbed, and he's just looking at how he's just reflecting on his life up to when he finally hits his last moment on Earth.
I only listened to one song by MCR, and it was a lot, almost I want to say peppier than anything I would have expected from what I had heard about it from other people.
Yeah. Danger Days, that one's fun. It's like, that one's like a post-apocalyptic comic book. Yeah, it's like, which is actually kind of apropos because in one of the music videos they actually got Grant Morrison in it.
Jeez.
And I think last I checked, Gerard was actually writing for Doom Patrol. I don't know if he still is. Let me check that.
Oh man, the premise of Doom Patrol is great. Just a bunch of people who, hey, we have superpowers and we don't particularly like society, but we're just kind of being dragged into it.
Let's see. Says in 20
that I got.
Says in 2014 it was announced Way will be making his debut in Marvel by writing for an alternate universe Spider-Man Edge of Spider-Verse. His story introduced Penny Parker, a Japanese-American student who pilots a biomechanical suit named Spider. I'm gonna go look at his bibliography, see which one's the most recent. There's the Umbrella Academy, which I already know. Yeah, he's Doom Patrol, which he was writing from 2016 to 2018. So he's not writing Doom Patrol anymore. No, he does not have any credits past 2018, so he might just not have anything out right now.
Probably not.
I actually would like to read his take on Doom Patrol, just because,
That would be interesting.
Yeah. I think like Blake Northcott sort of had a tweet about Gerard a while ago about like how when you come in and you have a genuine love for comics and their history, fans tend to accept you, and people got that off of Gerard with Umbrella Academy. Like, they could tell this is a guy who knows comics, this is a guy who loves them and respects the history. Even though I haven't read much of his stuff outside of Umbrella Academy, I will say I really did enjoy Umbrella Academy. It was a really interesting take on a superhero team, because like everyone knows kind of the conceit behind the Fantastic Four, where they were like a dysfunctional family. Well, Umbrella Academy, way more dysfunctional.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And did somebody summon the spirit of dead air?
Yes. Pretty much.
So,
that is in no way a preview.
Right.
Not at all.
Actually, I think the Spirit of Dead Air is streaming The Walking Dead right now.
Oh, it's about the assassination of JFK.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was in like.
That's all we'll be remembered for the rest of time.
Yeah. Gorgonite says, one of the MCs I have is an excessive drinker and smoker. Like, if she was human, she'd be dead within a year, and she does it just for fun. She can't get addicted, nor does her tolerance increase.
She'd get along well with Adobe.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Spider Jerusalem do that too?
I don't know. Here's what I got. Here's something I have to wonder about though. Like, I mean, like we all kind of establish Adobe is one of the adults in her life, in Maeve's life, that she considers a role model. So, how is obviously Maeve is gonna see like is probably gonna see some of Adobe's flaws. I was like that. See that she's not perfect.
Oh yeah. Adobe is very guarded though, and she does, seeing as that she never had a proper childhood, she goes out of her way to make sure that other children don't lose theirs. So she doesn't really tell Maeve a lot. Like, she doesn't even, like, things have to be dragged out of her for the most part.
It's more like I can imagine, like, she show up over at Adobe's place and she just see her completely smashed.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, if push comes to shove, Adobe can cure herself of inebriation. She just has to willingly do so.
And at which point she'd say, "Do not do as I say,
not as I
do
do.
as I say, because I did it and it was a bad idea."
Yeah, not because I'm smarter than you, but because I've effed up a lot. I don't want you to have to bother. Because if I've already gone through the jungle with a machete, take the path that's cleared.
Not to get pretentious or anything, but it almost kind of gives me sort of like a Holden Caulfield vibe for Adobe.
She's not nearly, well, she is cynical, but not that cynical.
It's not just that. It's just that another thing in Catcher in the Rye was that Holden he hated the idea of growing up.
Right. He especially far too soon.
And he also and there's like one scene where he takes his little sister to a carousel and he just watches her ride on one of the horses and he just feels happy.
Right, because I think one of the deals, I think it was strongly insinuated that Holden was a victim of child molestation. There's that whole scene where he was with this creepy older guy and he kept mentioning how, he was sweating and his heart rate would increase. And it's like, am I reading between the lines here? So I'm beginning to think that the reason he's so hung up on innocence is because he had his destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, like I think another that kind of drives that home is like how, like when he goes to like the Natural History Museum and he just talks about like how everything's nice there because it's all just frozen in time. Nothing changes.
Exactly. I mean, he's lost what he wants all these children to hang on to, and that's probably why he's so adamant. And Adobe is the same way because her childhood was destroyed very early, and she doesn't want any children to have to go through what she went through if she has anything to say about it.
Yeah.
That's why she keeps dissuading Maeve from trying to do grown-up things too fast. It's like, you're 14, kid, and your brain's not going to fully mature for another decade, so give yourself some time to be a kid,
Yeah.
Yep. It'll definitely be interesting to see when we start doing the crossovers.
Oh yeah. For those who aren't yet aware that we have referenced this, in the previous view there was a slide that we were going through all the artwork, and there is a image of the 3 leading ladies with a massive dragon in the background, and that is a reference to our first major crossover event that we have planned. So lots of cool stuff on the horizon for the Mythoverse for all 3 ladies.
Yep. Actually, all 4.
Yeah, all 4 ladies, yes, but we won't say anything more about the 4th.
Did you just assume that dragon's gender?
How can we assume it when we know it?
You don't understand how this works, man. You don't get to decide. The people who claim offense get to decide.
It's true, and the rules are ever shifting, nebulous, amorphous, and they can change from sentence to sentence, literally.
See, you know how this works.
I know. The only winning move is not to play.
Exactly.
Okay, Gorgon, I asked, how does Adobe feel about half demons? Interestingly enough, very well. If the half demon is the right kind of person. She actually works with a half succubus in issue number 3.
Oh, she does she?
She does, yes.
May I have her number for an interview?
I think that succubus is in a committed relationship with a vampire right now.
Yeah.
She is. Yes.
Well, sharing is caring.
Well, as long as you're willing to sacrifice a part of your, eternal soul essence, she's more than willing to share.
Gorgonite says, well, then
Yeah,
she and
see?
Myrna will get along swimmingly.
That's great.
Which now reminds me, I may have to actually add some. Matt and I may have to actually add stuff to the rules where half demons are concerned, which means I think we may have the door open for that.
Yeah.
So, should I just update my paragraph and send them that?
I don't know. Do you want to?
I mean, I was talking to them on Twitter. They're like, hey, send us some stuffs. And I was like, okay, I don't have a ton of stuff.
Well, then you better start making a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have the monies for that.
I know it's easier said than done, but there's no time like the present.
My insurance is $511.16 a month.
Yeah.
I'm just then if you don't get the money now, then just keep. All I can say is just keep plugging at it, and when you got more to show off, get back with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Creating
It'd still be
books.
nice to, send them some information, tell them what my general ideas are at the moment, so maybe I'll just do that.
Yeah.
That'd probably work. I'll just look. Having done this, I will say, the hardest part is just getting it done. Well, maybe not the hardest part. It's more like the most harrowing part. The most harrowing part is getting it done, just because, well, not everyone can do both writing and art. Most people can only do one or the other, and
or only have the time to do one or the other.
Yeah.
There's that too.
Yeah, time's a
also
big issue.
also possible.
Yeah.
And just look, it's all I can. The thing I can say about having done it, and something a guy I once talked to tell me, when you're an indie comics creator, you're essentially a lifelong gambler.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
So
you will
just-
have a day job for the foreseeable future.
Also true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like all I can say is you just have to keep plugging away and be ready to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still in the beginning stages, of course. That's just the state of this.
I mean, to give you some
And I've been
perspective,
thinking of-
we've been planning the Mythoverse for well over a year, so.
Yeah.
This thing was a year's work in the making. I mean, probably even more if you take into account what Matt and Dan put into Mythics and Adobe Kroger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Toby Kroger, I began writing the novel in 2011. I was not satisfied with it and put it on Amazon until 2017.
Yeah. So I guess if you take the work Matt and Dan did before they met me, all in all, it's been about 8 years worth of work.
Jeez.
Yeah, it takes time, but
Yeah.
it takes an apple tree like 4 years to grow from seed and to produce apples.
Yeah.
So, you just gotta get in for, you gotta have longer time preferences. You gotta see over the horizon.
Yep. I mean, I know what I want to do, and I want to do it, and I'm gonna make it happen because I've got neat ideas I want to go for.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep working on it a little bit each day. That's all I can tell you.
If it gives you a little motivation, if I can do it, pretty much anybody can.
Yeah, I mean, the three of us started from nothing, from scratch, from zero.
Yeah, I think the scariest part is just being told no.
No, you're gonna get told no. Then you just move on and try again.
What do you mean
The worst
told
part
no?
is getting told no from people who think they're looking out for your best interests. Like, don't try this thing because it could end in disaster and you'll be back to square one or even.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll just send them the character references I have at the moment, as early as they may be, and I'll update the paragraph, maybe expand it a bit tomorrow or something, and then send them that over Twitter, see what they think, talk to them a bit, see what they think of the general ideas as well.
Yeah, the important thing is be enthusiastic about your own work. You gotta be your own advocate, bro.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I think the ideas are cool ones.
That's good.
Exactly.
Yeah, and make sure that they get that feeling from you that you think the ideas are cool and that the effort you're putting into it will bear fruit. Anyway,
here's the thing. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep using Dylan because I like his art and all, but he's also trying to do his own thing,
Yeah.
Nah, it's whatever you want, man. And there's tons of artists on Twitter. I'm pretty sure. There's got to be one or two out there who would be willing to take on, but just make sure it's somebody you can afford.
Yep, that's important.
Yeah, and it needs to be someone whose aesthetic fits the tone of your story. Like, you don't want to just grab the first artist you can afford if they're not appropriate for your work.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, folks, it's about 11 o'clock my time. That means it's the 2-hour mark, and I got to sign off.
Yes.
So, thank you, everyone. Gorgonite, Alabaster, Cetral, Blind Artist was in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Salem, for chatting with us tonight. And
everyone.
We will be back here next week, same time, same location. And I will lead out as I lead it in with the Changeling theme. So check us out on Subscribestar and Patreon, folks, and follow us on Twitter at Mythoverse. And we will see you next week.
See ya.